Zanil Kumala worked late into the night in her small Durban apartment, beads scattered across the table, her fingers moving quickly as she finished the last orders for a big craft expo. This expo was supposed to be her break, her chance to finally grow her jewelry business. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet she prayed for every day. But the peace shattered the moment the door slammed open. Bongani stumbled in, smelling of cheap alcohol, his eyes red and unfocused. "Zanil, give me money," he slurred, dropping heavily onto the couch like he owned the world. She didn't even look up at first. She already knew where this was going. "I don't have more," she said softly. "I paid everything this week. Rent, groceries, even the loan shark you borrowed from." Her voice was calm, but inside her heart thudded. Bongani's face twisted with anger. "So you're talking back now? You think you run this house because you make a little jewelry?" He grabbed her arm, squeezing hard. She gasped as pain shot through her side. For a moment, she thought he would stop. Maybe he'd realize he was hurting her. But he didn't. His anger only grew. He shoved her against the table, tools clattering to the floor. Zanil clutched her stomach, shaking, fighting the urge to scream. This wasn't the first time he'd done this, but tonight felt different. Tonight, something inside her snapped. As Bongani ranted and tore through drawers searching for money that didn't exist, Zanil stood frozen, tears slipping down her cheek. She finally understood the truth she'd been trying to deny for years. Her marriage wasn't broken, it was over. And if she didn't leave soon, she might lose more than her dreams. She might lose herself. Zanil sat on the edge of the bed long after Bongani passed out, staring at the bruises forming on her arms. Her body hurt, but her heart hurt even more. Nights like this always dragged her back into memories she wished she could forget. Memories of who Bongani used to be. There was a time when he was charming, kind, the type of man who opened doors, cooked her breakfast, sent her sweet messages during work. Back then, she thought she had found someone who would protect her, someone who saw her talent and believed in her dreams. He used to brag to his friends, "My woman can make gold out of beads." She loved that version of him, laughing, warm, full of life. But the moment they got married, everything changed like someone had flipped a switch. Bongani slowly stopped working, always looking for a better job, yet never waking up before noon. At first, Zanil didn't mind supporting them both. She thought it was temporary. But then came the jealousy, questions about where she went, who she talked to, why she dressed nicely, why she came home 2 minutes later than usual. His sweet messages turned into interrogations. His compliments became accusations. And Lorado, his sister, only added fuel to the fire. Every time Zanil tried to talk about her problems, Lorado would roll her eyes and say, "You don't respect a man. That's why he gets angry. Fix yourself." Whenever Bongani messed up, it was somehow Zanil's fault. Lorado treated her like she was lucky Bongani chose her, even though she was the one holding the entire house together. Soon, every payday became a nightmare. The moment Zanil got paid, Bongani demanded cash. If she hesitated, even for a second, the shouting began. The threats followed, and sometimes the hits. The first time he hit her, she forgave him. He cried, apologized, blamed the stress, blamed alcohol, blamed life. She wanted to believe the man she loved was still in there somewhere, buried under frustration. She wanted to believe she could fix things. But the second time hurt more. And the third time came faster. And soon, Zanil found herself covering bruises with long sleeves, making excuses for why she was limping, avoiding mirrors because her own reflection reminded her of what she had become. A woman living in fear of someone who was supposed to love her. She stopped laughing. She stopped dreaming. Even her jewelry designs lost color. Everything about her life dimmed while Bongani's rage grew stronger, more unpredictable, more dangerous. And tonight, when he grabbed her, shoved her, and screamed in her face over money she didn't even have, something inside her finally broke. This wasn't love. This wasn't marriage. This was survival. As she sat there in the dim light, listening to Bongani snoring in the next room, Zanil felt a new emotion rising inside her, stronger than fear, sharper than pain. She was done. She wasn't just breaking down anymore. She was breaking free. Zanil waited until the house went silent. She sat on the bathroom floor, clutching her phone with shaking hands, her heartbeat so loud it felt like the whole world could hear it. She knew she couldn't stay another day. Not after tonight. Not after the look in Bongani's eyes, wild, angry, dangerous. She opened her WhatsApp and typed the only message she could think of. "Thandi, I need help." Her childhood friend, Thandika Masiko, replied within seconds, as if she had been waiting for this moment for years. "Where are you? Are you safe?" Zanil stared at the screen, tears filling her eyes. Safe? She didn't remember the last time she felt safe. "I want to leave," she typed. Thandika didn't hesitate. "Good. You have to leave now. Don't wait. I know a shelter in Umhlanga. They'll take you in immediately." Zanil felt her breath catch. The idea of leaving, really leaving, felt terrifying and freeing at the same time. What about my workshop? My tools? Thandika replied instantly. Your life is more important than things. Zanil wiped her face and forced herself to stand. She knew she had to move quickly. Bongani always woke up early when he was drunk, loud, confused, and angry. She couldn't let him catch her packing. She crept into the bedroom where he lay sprawled across the bed, snoring heavily. She moved slowly, quietly, grabbing only what she needed. Her ID, passport, bank card, a few clothes. She slipped her jewelry sketches into the bag too. Even though her hands trembled so badly, she almost tore the pages. They were the only part of her dream she could carry. Her tools, her beads, her work table, all the things she had collected over years. She had to leave them. The thought broke her heart. She felt like she was abandoning a part of herself. But staying here meant she might never live long enough to use them. The sky outside was still dark when she zipped up her bag. Dawn was just starting to touch the horizon, soft and quiet, almost like it was waiting for her. She took one last look at the home she had tried so hard to build, a home filled with her laughter, her hope, her effort. Now it was just a cage. She walked toward the door, each step heavy but certain. For the first time in years, she didn't feel guilty. She didn't feel weak. She felt ready. With trembling fingers, she unlocked the door and stepped outside. The cold morning air wrapped around her, clean and sharp, like a reminder that she was still alive. She pulled her hoodie up, tightened her grip on her bag, and walked down the street without looking back. She wasn't running away. She was choosing herself. And even though she had nothing but a small bag and a shaking heart, Zanil felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The women's shelter in Umlanga wasn't fancy. It wasn't big. But for Zanil, it felt like the safest place she had stepped into in years. The moment she walked through the doors, a gentle-faced social worker wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and said, "You're safe now." Those words alone almost made her cry. The shelter was full of women with stories heavier than hers, women who had survived things she could barely imagine. Some arrived with broken bones, some with babies on their hips, some with nothing but the clothes they were wearing. Yet somehow they still managed to smile, to joke, to support one another. Being around them made Zanil feel less alone. For the first time, she realized she wasn't the only one living in fear. She wasn't weak. She wasn't stupid. She was simply a woman who had been hurt, and now she was trying to rebuild. Days slowly turned into weeks. The shelter had rules, routines, therapy sessions, and workshops to help the women regain their confidence. Zanil attended every session she could. At first, she barely spoke, but listening to others share their stories of escape, courage, and survival, started to heal something inside her. She began to breathe normally again. She started sleeping through the night, and slowly, the heaviness around her heart began to lift. Thandika visited her often, always bringing warm food, soft clothes, and endless encouragement. One afternoon, Thandi arrived with a small box full of donated jewelry tools: pliers, wire, beads, needles, and a tiny folding table. "I told the shelter about your talent," Thandika said proudly. "They want you to restart your business, even if it's small for now." Zanil stared at the tools with trembling hands. It felt like someone had handed her back her identity. She set up a little crafting corner in the shared recreation room, and every day after her chores, she sat there making pieces: earrings, necklaces, bracelets, all inspired by African beadwork mixed with modern, stylish design. Patterns she hadn't drawn in years came back to her fingers like old friends. At first, she made them for the women in the shelter, then the shelter staff. Then a tourist couple visited during a charity outreach event and bought 6 pieces on the spot. They posted pictures online and tagged her small page. Slowly, more people began messaging her. Influencers who visited Umlanga started noticing her designs: bright, bold colors that told stories of identity, pain, and power. Her tiny business grew one order at a time. Meanwhile, the shelter helped her file a restraining order against Bongani. He tried to argue, telling the authorities he never laid a hand on her and that she was overreacting. But Zanil didn't care anymore. She wasn't afraid of his lies. She had bruises, messages, witnesses, and a new strength she never thought she would have. She wasn't hiding now. She was rebuilding. Every bead she threaded, every design she finished, every sale she made, felt like one more step toward the life she deserved. She had left everything behind, but somehow, she was gaining more than she lost. Zanil never imagined that one day she would have her own studio, but life has a way of surprising people who refuse to give up. After months of working from the shelter's recreation room and saving every tiny profit she made, she finally gathered enough courage and money to rent a small space in Morningside. It wasn't big, just a cozy little shop with white walls, bright windows, and a small wooden table she found secondhand. But to her, it felt like a palace. A place she built with her own hands. A place no one could take away from her. She painted the walls herself, decorated them with African patterns, and arranged her jewelry neatly in handmade displays. The first day she opened, Her heart raced so fast she could hear it in her ears. She whispered to herself, "This is the beginning." And it really was. Slowly, customers started walking in, locals, students, tourists, women who loved bold colors and meaningful design. Zanil treated every customer with kindness, sharing the stories behind each piece. Some came back with friends. Some ordered custom items. Within a few weeks, her daily sales doubled. Then something happened that changed everything. A famous Durban fashion blogger walked into her studio by chance, drawn in by the bright beadwork glowing through the window. She tried on a necklace, took pictures, and posted them with the caption, "Found a hidden gem in Morningside, Kumalo Gold. Pure African elegance." Within hours, Zanil's phone exploded with notifications, messages, orders, requests from people in Cape Town, Johannesburg, Nairobi, even London. Her online page went from a few followers to thousands overnight. She barely slept that week, working late into the night just to keep up with the demand. But this time, she wasn't working in pain or fear. She was working in freedom. Zanil decided she would never let success change who she was. So instead of spending money on new clothes or fancy things, she reinvested every cent back into the business. She bought better tools, more materials, and a proper workbench. She expanded her designs, experimented with mixed metals, and created a signature collection that customers adored. And then she made a decision that showed exactly who she was becoming. She went back to the shelter and hired 2 young women, Ayanda and Lebo, both trying to rebuild their lives just like she once did. She taught them how to bead, how to design, how to package orders, how to believe in themselves again. Watching them learn reminded her why she fought so hard to survive. People began calling her brand more than just jewelry. They called it a movement. Kumalo Gold wasn't about wealth or status. It was about strength, identity, and rebirth. Word spread across South Africa. Boutiques reached out. Stylist teams requested her pieces for magazine shoots. Her small studio buzzed with energy, laughter, music, and hope. Everything she once thought she had lost. Zanil had risen from the ashes, not as a victim, but as a creator, a leader, and a woman who rebuilt her entire life with her own hands. Zanil still remembered the day she received an email inviting her to a local art and fashion exhibition in Durban. She almost thought it was a mistake. Her, in an exhibition filled with top designers? But the organizers had seen her pieces online and wanted her there. She accepted with a nervous smile, not realizing that this one event would open the door to an entirely new world. The exhibition hall was buzzing with music, cameras, and excited voices. Designers from different parts of South Africa filled their booths with beautiful creations, clothing, sculptures, bags, and accessories. Zanil stood behind her small table, her hands slightly shaking as she arranged her necklaces and earrings for display. She felt tiny among the big names, but the moment people started stopping by, admiring her beadwork, she relaxed. She didn't need to compete. Her work spoke for itself. Hours later, a tall man with warm eyes and a stylish Ghanaian Kent jacket approached her table. He studied her pieces one by one, not saying a word. Zanil thought he didn't like them, but then he finally looked up and smiled. "You're the artist?" he asked. She nodded. "My name is Kwesi Boteng," he said, extending his hand. "Fashion curator from Accra. And these," he picked up a bold, multicolored choker. "These belong in Pan-African Fashion Week." Zanil froze. She blinked twice, thinking she misheard him. You mean the one in Accra?" "The big one." Kwesi laughed softly. "Yes, that one. I want you there. Africa needs to see your story." Her heart pounded so loud it drowned out the music around her. Someone from Ghana, a fashion heavyweight, wanted her on a global stage. A month later, she was on a plane, holding her passport like it was made of glass. She hadn't traveled in years, not since her marriage. She had never felt this free. When she arrived in Accra, the city welcomed her with warm air, bright colors, and the sound of drums echoing from distant streets. It felt like stepping into a dream. At the Fashion Week venue, she set up her display nervously, expecting to be overshadowed by the bigger name. But the moment the lights hit her jewelry, crowds gathered. People touched the pieces gently, amazed by the texture, the patterns, the colors. They asked about her story, how she learned beadwork, what inspired her designs, what the patterns meant. She told them about strength, identity, and healing. She told them how each piece carried pieces of her past and her rebirth. Her collection sold out on the first day. Fashion magazines asked for interviews. Investors handed her business cards, promising collaborations, funding, and international distribution. Models walked around wearing her pieces, photographers snapped pictures, and social media lit up with her name, Kumalo Gold, from Ghana to Kenya to the diaspora on the world. As she stood on the balcony of her hotel that night, staring at the lights of Accra, she felt something powerful settle in her chest. The world finally saw the worth her husband tried so hard to crush. And Zanil knew she was just getting started. Back in Durban, Bongani's life was falling apart in slow, painful pieces, almost the same way he had broken Zanil over the years. At first, he pretended everything was fine. He told neighbors she ran off to think, told friends she just needed space, and told himself she would come crawling back. But days turned into weeks, and reality hit him harder than any hangover ever had. The bills piled up, the loan sharks returned, and without Zanil's money, everything collapsed. At work, his temper grew worse. He snapped at customers, argued with co-workers, and arrived late almost every day. One afternoon, his boss finally had enough and fired him on the spot. Bongani shouted, made excuses, and promised to do better. But no one was listening anymore. His reputation was ruined, and nobody wanted to hire a man known for violence and laziness. Without a job, rent became impossible to pay. Within a month, the landlord kicked him out. Bongani stood outside the building with his few belongings stuffed into black trash bags, watching strangers walk past him like he didn't exist. For the first time, he felt what Zanil had felt for years, powerless and unwanted. His friends, who once drank with him every weekend, slowly disappeared. The moment his pockets dried up, so did their loyalty. They stopped answering his calls, ignored his messages, and pretended not to know him when they saw him at the tavern. Even the women he flirted with avoided him now. Nobody wanted to be associated with a man drowning in debt and disgrace. But the worst sting came from his own sister, Lorato. She barged into his tiny rented room one day, furious. "You're useless," she snapped. "You had a good wife, loyal, hardworking, beautiful, and you destroyed your marriage because of your stupid pride." Bongani didn't even have the strength to argue. He just sat there, staring at the floor while Lorato shook her head in disgust. "You ruined your own life," she said quietly before leaving. The door slammed behind her. He had never felt more alone. One evening, while flipping through the TV channels in the communal lounge of the cheap building he was staying in, Bongani froze. There she was, Zanil, his wife. His Zanil, but not the broken woman he remembered. She looked powerful, glowing, confident. She was being interviewed on a popular lifestyle show about her brand Kumalo Gold and her success across Africa. People on the TV clapped for her, smiled at her, admired her. He stared at the screen, unable to breathe. His throat tightened. His eyes burned. Humiliation washed over him like fire. How could she rise so high while he fell so low? He wanted to shout, to smash the TV, to blame someone. But deep down, he knew this was all his doing. That night, he tried calling her old number. It was disconnected. He went to her studio, thinking she might take pity on him. But security stopped him at the gate before he even reached the building. "Sir, you're not allowed here," the guard said firmly. Bongani swallowed hard, staring at the ground. His voice cracked. I just want to see her. She doesn't want to see you." Those words hit him like a punch to the chest. For the first time in his life, Bongani understood the full weight of his actions. He hadn't just lost a wife. He lost the best part of his life, and there was no getting her back. The night of the charity gala was electric. Zanil walked through the hall in a flowing dress, surrounded by women whose stories mirrored her own, all gathered to celebrate survival and resilience. Her jewelry sparkled under the warm lights, a symbol of the journey she had fought so hard to complete. Cameras flashed, reporters interviewed her, and donors praised her work. Everything she had dreamed of, the freedom, the respect, the impact, was finally real. And then she saw him, Bongani, slouched in the corner, his clothes rumpled, eyes red from crying, trying to blend in. But he couldn't hide. The moment he spotted her, something shifted. He pushed through the crowd, ignoring the polite smiles and whispers, and made his way to the stage where Zanil was standing. The room fell silent as he dropped to his knees in front of everyone. "Zanil," he sobbed, voice cracking, "please. I was wrong. Please forgive me. I know I hurt you. I know I destroyed everything. You were my blessing, and I let it slip away. I want another chance. Just one chance to make it right." His tears seemed theatrical, exaggerated, the kind of display that demanded attention. Women gasped. Donors shifted uncomfortably. Cameras zoomed in, capturing every desperate second. Bongani held out his hands, trembling, as if pleading for her to hand her life back into his care. Zanil felt the sting of anger rise, but also a deep, calm power that only comes from knowing your worth. She looked him square in the eyes, seeing not the man she had loved, but the man she had survived. She took a deep breath and let the words fall like a hammer. "You broke what you never valued." The room went utterly silent. Some mouths hung open. Some hands froze mid-applause. Bongani blinked, stunned, like the words had struck him physically. He opened his mouth to speak, but Zanil didn't give him another chance. She straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and continued her speech to the audience. "Tonight is about strength, survival, and new beginnings. No one has the right to take away your worth, ever. And some people," she glanced briefly at Bongani, "realized too late that what they destroyed was priceless." Security quietly moved toward him, gently guiding him away. He struggled, tried to speak again, but the guards blocked him. He looked back at Zanil one last time, eyes filled with regret, and perhaps a sliver of understanding, before being escorted out. The gala continued, but the energy had changed. Zanil's presence radiated something stronger than celebration, empowerment. Women came forward, thanking her, hugging her, inspired by the courage it took to stand tall in front of the man who once tried to control her. Bangani's apology, dramatic and desperate, meant nothing to her, because she had already reclaimed everything he thought he could take: her life, her freedom, her dignity. And in that moment, Zanil realized she didn't just survive. She had conquered. As the security guards led Bangani out of the gala, Zanil didn't watch. She kept walking, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor, her shoulders straight, her head held high. The murmurs of the crowd brushed past her, the flashes of cameras capturing the moment she finally stepped free from a past that had held her captive for far too long. Outside, reporters whispered to one another, replaying the scene over and over, the man broken, the woman unshakable. She could feel their eyes on her, but for the first time in years, she didn't care. Not really. She had earned this life, and no one could take it away. The drive home was quiet, giving her time to breathe deeply for the first time in years. The city lights of Durban blurred past, reflecting in her eyes as she thought about everything she had survived. The late nights hiding in fear, the bruises, the stolen dreams, the endless mental battles. All of it had led her here, to a moment of undeniable power, peace, and clarity. Freedom wasn't just a word anymore. It was her reality. When she walked into her studio, the warm lights and familiar scent of beads and metals greeted her like an old friend. She had left it running while preparing for the gala, and the little bell above the door jingled softly as she entered. Her employees, Ayanda and Lebo, were waiting. They were smiling, eyes sparkling with admiration and love for the woman who had not only survived but thrived. "Surprise," they said in unison, revealing a framed picture they had placed on her desk. Bold letters read, "Survivor, Creator, Queen." Zanil froze for a moment, tears prickling the corners of her eyes. She reached out and touched the frame gently, as if confirming it was real. This wasn't just a gift, it was a declaration. A reminder that she had risen from the ashes, that she had rebuilt everything on her own terms. Every sacrifice, every tear, every moment of fear, it had all been worth it. She looked around her studio, at the tables full of beads and metals, at the designs waiting to be packaged, at the bright sunlight streaming through the windows. This was hers. Every piece of it. And not just the studio, the life, the freedom, the respect, the dreams. Bangani could never touch it. He couldn't undo her success, her courage, or her joy. Zanil smiled, a quiet, confident smile that held years of pain and triumph in equal measure. She sat at her desk, opening a notebook to sketch new designs, thinking about the future she was creating. Not just for herself, but for every woman who had been told she was weak, unworthy, or replaceable. Freedom, she realized, tasted sweeter than any apology. And for the first time in her life, Zanil Kumalo knew she was truly, completely unstoppable. Years later, Zanil Kumalo's life looked completely different from the one she had escaped. Her small studio in Morningside had grown into multiple boutiques across South Africa, with new branches in Ghana and Kenya. Each store carried her signature designs, bold, colorful, meaningful pieces that told a story of strength and resilience. Tourists, locals, and influencers flocked to her boutiques, eager to own a piece of her journey. But Zanil's success wasn't just about jewelry. She opened a training center for young African women who had escaped abuse, giving them the tools, skills, and confidence to rebuild their own lives. She taught them not only to bead and design, but to believe in themselves, to know their worth, and to never settle for less than respect. Seeing the women leave her center with jobs, smiles, and hope reminded her of the day she had walked away from Bangani, carrying nothing but a small bag and her courage. At home, she created a sanctuary, a place filled with laughter, music, and warmth instead of fear. Her house smelled of fresh flowers and home-cooked meals. She spent evenings sketching new jewelry ideas, hosting friends, and mentoring the young women she had trained. Every corner reflected the life she had built with her own hands, one of freedom, creativity, and peace. Her story spread across the continent, inspiring thousands of women who had once believed they had no way out. Social media shared her words widely, her message resonating deeply. "A man tried to destroy me for money. Now the world pays me for what he never saw my worth." Zanil smiled as she read the comments and messages pouring in from Lagos to Nairobi, from Cape Town to Accra. She had not only survived, she had thrived. She had created a life of purpose, independence, and joy. And every single day, she woke up knowing she had built it all without him.